Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, brought to you by City Current and powered by Lipscomb & Pitts Insurance. This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are giving back and making a difference, so we can learn and do the same. We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose. Now here's our host, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're in for a fun treat when you talk about tying in the legal world with some ballroom dancing, with some giving back and philanthropy. So it's an awesome honor to have. We have Julie-Karel Elkin. She's a member with Spicer Rudstrom. We're out of Nashville, Tennessee. So how are you doing? JK, that's the AKA JK.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
So let's start. I mean, the fun of this podcast is the fact that we do get to dive into your personal story as much as your professional story and the philanthropy as well. But give us a little bit of just background on where you grew up.
Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Obviously, with a first name like Julie-Karel, my parents had some sort of weird premonition that we'd move to the south. Because the double first name has...
it's a trend.
Certainly a trend, more in the South. And, of course, I've tortured my daughter with a double first name as well.
Nice.
But the JK does come in handy because then people remember me quite easily. So we moved down here probably in the mid-'80s, and I thought my parents were killing me by moving me to Nashville. But... in the grand scheme of things, it was the right thing to do because the whole family is here. At that, I have two older brothers, and my parents decided that they wanted to move south, but if they didn't do it quickly, my brothers would probably have significant others up north, and we would be split. So they picked us up, and in no time, I found myself here in actually Brentwood, which is a suburb on the south side of Nashville.
Did they come down here for a job, or was it just hey, we're going south and we want to move toward the Nashville area, and this is just where they ended up?
Well, they were in a franchised business my dad owned, and so they bought this area.
Gotcha.
And moved us down here because, yes, my mom was sick and tired of the north and wanted to live in the south, so here we came.
I can appreciate that. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my parents were high school sweethearts in Fort Worth, Texas. And my mom basically gave my dad the same ultimatum. She's like, I cannot handle 8 months of snow, so either we move back together or I move back without you. And they moved back together.
We did a short stint outside of Milwaukee, too. So Brookfield, Wisconsin was another place that we
were in
lived
Brookfield,
as
yeah.
well.
Waukesha, Brookfield, that whole area.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Cheese curds, walleye festivals. Yeah, I remember some interesting stories from Wisconsin.
You got to say it right, Wisconsin.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's good. I like this. I like where this is going already. So what was your biggest kind of acclimation when you talk about moving from, especially Chicago, what was it like moving to Nashville and kind of uprooting? Was that a factor at all? Was it easy? What was that like?
At the time, as a junior in high school, I felt like it was torture. I went from a relatively large high school to Battleground Academy, which is a very small private school with some cannons in the courtyard. So it was a culture shock. For those who can't see me, I have short hair, and I have always worn short hair. When I moved down here to the south, that was another thing that was a little bit different, that most women did not wear short hair at all. So it was a bit of a transition going to Battleground Academy, but I learned and found some really fabulous people, and really BGA took me in and made me one of their own.
Nice.
And the kids were great.
Do you still keep in touch with some of the students there and the faculty and the team? And
we do. And the
nice.
faculty there is what has always made the school so great, and my children go there. But yes, I still have contacts with lots of the alum and really great people here in Middle Tennessee.
Give me one family tradition, especially maybe from like the Chicago area, but just give me one family tradition that stands out to you that's kind of a neat, doesn't have to be around the holidays, just anything in general. What stands out as you as a neat tradition?
Well, I guess we're together constantly, and I guess that's sort of a good thing and a bad thing with a family. But for us, it's almost like The Sopranos. Most weekends, either Saturday night or Sunday night, we're eating dinner together.
Nice.
And we have all the cousins together. So my parents have 11 grandchildren. And so that's a house full of people every weekend. And whereas some people see their family once or twice a year, or talk to them sporadically, I probably talk to my oldest brother 4 or 5 days a week. I see my mom almost every day. And the kids see their cousins at least weekly,
nice.
If not more than that. So just we're in constant contact, which sometimes can be a little stressful, but really it is a good thing.
Well, and to have that support network, I think, is big, because especially just being a busy professional and trying to be a mother and everything else, trying to get the kids to sports and gymnastics, I know in your case, all these different things you take for granted sometimes, but having family as a support network can be huge.
It is great. And sometimes we do get the call. It's, 2:30 in the afternoon and somebody can't get somewhere to get their child.
Right.
And so we just pick up and go, which is nice.
Absolutely. So growing up, did you play any sports? What were the things that you were interested in?
I'm a cheerleader. So I started cheering in the 2nd grade and cheered actually on into college. I always loved it. It was sporty for me because we did the pyramid building and all sorts of things like that. We did competitions, and it just sort of suits my style. So yeah, I did the cheerleading.
So did that kind of parlay and grow into the ballroom dancing? When does ballroom dancing come into this equation?
The ballroom dancing, that is what brought us to Middle Tennessee. That was my family's business.
This is a family legacy. I gotcha.
And everyone in my family pretty much can dance very well.
Well, that makes a great family reunion. Jeez.
Yeah.
Turn on some music and let you guys go.
If you want to see some dancing, you will invite the Elkin somewhere. But it just wasn't something that came supernaturally to me. My middle brother is at least a 7-time, it may be more, 7-time world champion.
Wow.
He's fabulous. And he has dance studios. And then my oldest brother, he actually developed custom software system that allows dance studios to run. And so everybody is in the dance business, and that's why my dad called me the black sheep of the family all the time, because I was the lawyer.
So when does the lawyer kind of step in? At what point? Obviously going to law school, but at what point do you realize, hey, I want to go into law as a profession?
Well, I was in college, and I really couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I took a public speaking class, and where other people were literally almost vomiting in the hallway before they had to go out and talk.
Well, it is like the greatest fear next to death.
And as my dad used to say, yeah, it's public dancing, not public speaking. But I didn't have any problem with it. And then when I was later on in college, we did a moot court session. And one of the judges here in town ran the moot court, and Judge Hamilton down in Lawrenceburg. And I played the prosecutor, and as soon as I was done, he said, "You're going to law school, right?" And so I thought, all right, I'll go to law school. And so I did.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's pretty neat, especially for someone who doesn't know really what they want to do at a young age, and to have somebody with that prominence say, wow, I see real potential, and this is what you're going to do, and next thing you know, it's become a career. Walk us through, because it's a neat story of going in and being an attorney, but then also, too, stepping away from it and then coming back. So it's a neat story, but share it.
Yeah, I had always been the attorney for the business and handled formation and things like that. But I had been practicing with Spicer for probably 13 or 14 years. And some things happened, but my dad wanted to retire. And we were going through a list of people who could purchase the business because that was the retirement. And there was no succession plan. And so at the end of the day, I wanted somebody who had wherewithal, and he wanted somebody who could actually run it. And so he looked at me and he said, well, you could do it. And I went home and I talked to my husband that night and came back to him the next day and said, I'll do it. Wow. And so that sort of gave my dad, a renewal in wanting to, continue on and work the business. So he and I worked it together for about 8 years, and we bought the building, we expanded into Franklin. So I had all these new experiences sitting behind that desk and working that business.
And also doing it with your father. That's
doing
a neat
it with
story
my
too.
dad
I know probably some stress in there, but right.
We did. We could get at it sometimes, but and then my dad got sick, unfortunately. But amazingly, someone came both with wherewithal and who could actually run it. And so they proposed to purchase it, and I really thought it was the right thing to do. So that they did that, and there I was. I went back to Spicer just to say, hey, I'm coming back into the law business, never dreaming that I would have the opportunity to come back to the firm that I absolutely loved. And Mark was one of the people in Rich Spicer, and they said, well, you're coming back, right? So that was really neat, but I didn't really know at that point what I wanted to be when I grew up, because now here I was on a new venture again.
Right.
Yeah.
When you talk about the legal profession, traditionally a very male-dominated field, what's been your experience in terms of not just working at Spicer Rudstrom, but just in general, being an ambassador, being a role model, having younger women look up to you who's had a successful career? What is that like? Does that play a role at all in any of your thought process? Or I'm curious from your standpoint of just being a woman working in traditionally a male-dominated field.
While I was doing it, I don't think I really had many thoughts about it. My 2 older brothers were pretty darn rough on me. And so I already came in pretty tough, but also probably because of the structure of the family, knowing who I was. And so I didn't really have, I guess some of the problems that I think some females in the workplace might experience. Now, having said that, looking back and seeing the wonderful people that I got to work with, right. I know now that not everybody has that sense about them. And I always had a pretty strong self-esteem that I know not everybody has. And so trying to make sure that people understand that you can't let people tear you down. And you don't have to let people tear you down. You don't have to be a jerk when you defend yourself, but you can certainly stand up for yourself and should.
Absolutely. I just know in Memphis, it's the Association for Women Attorneys, and that's a big piece of the equation is trying to get more women, especially young women, to look at the profession and understand work-life balance and learn from those who have been in it. And to your point, learn to stand up for themselves. And it's just an interesting dynamic when you look at not just the legal field, but engineering and so many other things, that trying to get more women involved in those arenas, it's extremely important for us on so many levels.
Yeah, there were a few attorneys that I might have had a difficult time with, but again, for the most part, at least here in Middle Tennessee where I was, I didn't have a lot of problem. And maybe that was because of the backing of the firm as well. And the firm has always had female partners. They did at the time. So I had people that I could look up to. I was also well trained. So people like Mark Dedman and Rich Spicer, they made sure that I went in fully armed with what I needed to do when I was representing my clients.
Nice.
So it worked out very well for me, but I know that there are others that do not have that experience.
Share a little of just your expertise, if you will. I know when you talk about legal profession, just like marketing or anything else, it can be so wide, but yet also so narrow. So what were some of the things that you really like to focus on, or what's been kind of your expertise areas?
Well, I used to do a lot of litigation. And that is one thing that when I came back, I really wanted to try and do something different. Sitting in that CEO chair made me realize how handy the law degree was to a business person. There were lots of questions that came up, even just silly stuff from the employees, that they heard something, in the news or read something online. about wage and hour, where I would know what the real rule was, and I would just tell them to shush and go away, that they they didn't have a claim, or employment issues, workers' compensation, all sorts of things that the business owner runs into that they may not know the answer to, but I do off the top of my head. So I've spent the past year kind of figuring out how do I want to deliver this legal service. And I think we've got it, hopefully. We'll tweak it some more, but I'd really like small business people and medium-sized business people who don't have lawyers on retainer, and most don't, to know that there's somebody that they can call when they have questions. And I'm a lawyer who actually gives answers.
And I think there's also a level of empathy. I mean, now that you've sat in that chair and you've had to make those decisions and you've dealt with, you see it in many cases where a CEO, for example, doesn't think that person has ever sat, or doesn't know what they've gone through, or doesn't understand the nuances of the decisions that they're having to make and all the ramifications. And to know that you've gone through those, and you probably now come at it from a very different angle than probably even before, which is extremely helpful.
Well, I always grew up in a small business atmosphere. That was what our family, did, and that's how my dad trained us. Customer service, very important, actually the most important thing. So with that in mind, now coupling, the experience of, I understand what a business owner is going through. I understand how they might question their decisions, and they just need somebody to say, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. Yeah, but here's what might happen. Somebody that they can just feel like gets them. And so I think that's where I can come in.
Nice. Let's talk about philanthropy. I know that there's some causes, and we'll talk about those very specific ones that are near and dear to your heart. But talk about overall, just with your family, especially a large family, being able to not only have a legacy within kind of the dance space, but more importantly, just to be a part of the fabric of the community. What's your philosophy on just being a part of the community, getting involved, rolling up your sleeves, volunteering, trying to make a difference?
Well, for growing up, in the dance business, ballroom dance business is a fun business. The people who take ballroom dancing are fun people. So it is just a tremendous joy, but it's also a lot of young people. The dancers are young people. They love the arts. They have some quirks to them, but to teach them and to train them, and that was my dad's passion, was he trained everyone with what he knew. He would give information and training to anyone, and did so for his staff for 50 years. And that was fabulous to watch and be part of. Whereas he gave meetings, I always would tell the staff, I lived the meeting, because they would look at me, is this true? Yes, it's true. So from that part, from the family standpoint, it really involved training people in a positive attitude. You can't do anything with a bad attitude. It doesn't work. So things like that for everybody we've ever met. And I think the family does try to model positive, good behavior.
Right.
But also we're all involved in, we have different churches that we're involved in. But, making sure that God was in our lives and that we were trying to follow a good path. And then we talked about working with Second Harvest. We've always done, food drives and things like that through business. One of the things I didn't mention was Toys for Tots too. The studios always did that every year, and it was a big success. But I'm looking now and trying to spearhead an initiative with the firm called Read to Me. Mm-hmm. And I met a gentleman named Donovan Robertson. Actually, as part of the firm's diversity outreach, I just, on a whim, went out to a mixer, trying to meet people from minority groups, and that's where I ran into Donovan, and we struck up a friendship. But the Read to Me program is designed to allow children to be read to, because we all know that makes such a huge difference in how they do in school and how they do later in life. So Donovan's goal is to read to every child on the planet. but we're going to, I think, start in Memphis, and that's his plan.
Well, and it's. I mean, I've talked to him, and it's extremely powerful in the sense of leveraging technology so that you can have people. If you think about it, well, first things first. We talk about that third grade, up to third grade, you're learning to read. After the third grade, you're reading to learn. So there's a very pivotal moment in there where you're really focused on this early education, but really focused on readership, but trying to get busy professionals to leverage. And so imagine if you have a lunch break and you can leverage that hour, especially if you don't have to leave the office. If you can save an hour of drive time, now there's no excuse whatsoever where you can literally tap in using technology and read to a classroom of kids or reading one-on-one, working through technology. Now you've removed the barrier of having to travel. And so it's leveraging technology in a very, very real way that I think is going to help move the needle. And so I'm excited as well. I think when you look at the power of it, it has not just for Memphis, but all over our nation, it has a huge potential.
Well, and the world is so small now, and we do have these technologies, so we should be using them.
Right.
And I think this is a perfect opportunity. So our goal is to get 100% of the lawyers, which I don't think we're going to have any problem doing, and start the reading program. We do have a Memphis office, so obviously some of those lawyers will be right there in the classroom. Yep. Any of us can travel down who want to, but otherwise we can do it remotely. And I said to Donovan that, when I read to my youngest at night, I would be happy to log in, and anybody else who wants to follow along with whatever story we're on, that they can log into, and I think that would be fabulous.
And it breaks down a lot of barriers. So that's Read to Me. And I know that you mentioned Second Harvest. Explain a little bit more about Second Harvest. Second
Harvest Food Bank is a long-running philanthropy here in Nashville, and they do a fabulous job. They push out a lot of food. They allow children to come in, and the kids can sort food. They can pack the baskets. They just really do a great job, and then get that food out to the community. They've got a great network and a great system, and it just works really, really well.
I think that's a whole other dynamic too, is you have the role modeling and the reading to the kids, but then when you start getting the kids to serve as well, the younger, we on our end, we try to get our kids heavily involved, whether it's picking up litter or doing the food runs.
Did that last week.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, like for kids, it makes a huge difference, because once you realize how long it takes and how hard it is, especially when you're out there in the heat of the day, and you're up there, sadly picking up cigarette butts and plastic water bottles and stuff like that, it changes their outlook, one, on civic pride, but two, on they'll never throw something out a window for a car ever, because they realize how long it takes to pick up all that stuff and how ridiculous it is.
It's ridiculous.
So, but I think, getting kids involved at an early age is really important to set the stage for them, for their empathy, for their relationships, but just their engagement as a citizen.
Yeah, and my daughter's pronunciation of Michelob Light, that's what we were picking up. Garbage. My husband and I started laughing with the Michelob Light. Yeah. So somebody,
right.
somebody was drinking a lot of that, and that's what we were picking up.
It's so sad, but I tell parents all the time, if you want your kids to have empathy, if you want them to respect others, and there's, instead of asking them, obviously, how was your day? What did you do during your day that was kind, or how did you help somebody else? But doing things like that, taking them on and going picking up litter, or just anything that's servant-minded, community service will change a child, especially when they see that the parent is loving it and involved as well. It sets the stage. Okay, so the next one is Davis House. Talk about Davis House.
One of my favorite clients, and actually we were just talking yesterday that we've known each other now for, probably close to 10 years. And he's on the board with Davis House, and they have an annual fundraiser called the Button Ball, and it's fabulous fun, but it is a serious philanthropy. And what they do is they provide stable housing for children who have been seriously abused. So it's a very safe space for the kids, but it's also really tragic to hear the stories. But again, just a little bit of healing, and so that the children know that there are people out there who care. And for probably 25 years, I have been cutting the buttons, the extra buttons off of clothing that, I bought, or the extras that come in the little bags or whatever. For some reason, I just always saved them. I have no idea. I've been dragging them around for 20 plus years. And then I ran into Brenda Davis, who took lessons at the Franklin studio. And she was telling me about the button ball, and that when the kids come in, they get this button. This button, signifies that somebody cares for them. And I thought, no wonder why I've been carrying around this box of buttons for 25 years. And so I brought that box in.
There you go.
And let me tell you, they filled up a giant bowl of buttons with the buttons that I had been saving all these years.
Little things like that. I mean, you never know. Little things where it's like, I'm just going to save this. Things like pop tabs, the little things off a soda can, Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. You think it's something as simple as just saving the little pop tab on your soda, and yet they make tens of thousands of dollars. People bring them in by the truckload, and it's just like a few sodas a day. Here you go. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, to your point, you have a huge bucket full of buttons or a huge bucket full of pop tabs. So little things add up in big ways.
They certainly do.
What's been kind of just one of your favorite moments in terms of your children and seeing them grow up, mature, become young leaders, get involved? What give me kind of one moment that puts a smile on your face?
Well, I've got a spread. So I've got a 15-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and then a 5-year-old son. So it's a lot of experiences. Exactly. All at once. So it is my husband and I together. It is all we can do to keep up with the crew, and in a good way. We were talking about potentially moving out to the country. I grew up with horses on the south side of Chicago in Palos. We had enough room, and we had horses, which was a fabulous way to grow up. And if you grow up learning to care for something else that is relying on you, I think does teach you a lot of lessons. And so my husband and I talked about it a bit, got the kids on board, and now we, as I call it, de-Brentified. And so we have 56 acres in Marshall County, yes, that we moved to about mid last year. So
do you drive a tractor? Does your husband drive a tractor? Is that is it full blown?
We're working on it.
Okay, nice.
We will. It has all the fixins.
Yeah. Baling some hay and all sorts of fun stuff.
And one of my nieces, she was boarding her horse, but it got too expensive for her. Her job has taken off, and so she can't be at the barn helping out. So she said, can we put the horse? So as soon as we got the property, all of a sudden we had a horse.
Nice.
Now, I hadn't ridden a horse in 30 years, and I just did not feel confident in what I was doing. And plus, I was really young. And then somebody asked me, well, don't you remember doing all this? I was young, so a lot of it was being done for me by my brother or my parents. And so I just didn't feel confident in trying to ride the horse or any of that. So 2 weeks ago, we went to an equestrian lodge for the week. No TV, no cell phones. It was awesome. And we immersed ourselves in horses. The kids loved it. I had no complaints. They wanted to go back. They want to do a learning vacation
That's
next
awesome.
year. Yeah,
because that can be tough
different.
to try to please. Like at those ages, we have a 14 and a 9-year-old, and it's like they don't want to do anything close to what we want to do, and the two of them don't want to do the same thing, and it can be a challenge.
I was terrified it was going to be a disaster, a really expensive disaster at that.
Right. So where is this place again?
It was Hill Country Lodge. It was in Bandera, Texas, which is outside of San Antonio. And I really did search up this lady. She's fabulous, Diane Lindig. She really let us learn how to groom, how to tack, how to feed. She taught us a lot about care, but then she trained us, and then we rode. And by the last day, we're going through an obstacle course on these horses racing each other.
Wow.
Which of course I jettisoned myself when my horse took a jump, but all is well. All is well. Mom got back on the horse. But it was really fabulous for us as a family. I had told the kids, okay, no complaints on day 1. Let's see how this is. Keep an open mind. And so on day 2, and of course, I didn't even realize there wasn't going to be a TV there. I mean, there was nothing.
Right.
Now, we could go on the internet in the owner's, like, basically in their house.
Were you sleeping in a tent? Or
No.
Okay.
We were in a very nice cabin.
Gotcha.
No, it was fabulous. It really was fabulous. But it was was rustic. But on day 2, so I said, okay, lay it on me. What's terrible? What's wrong? And they were like, no way, this is great. You're kidding me. So, and the whole week was like that. And my husband had never ridden a horse before. And I think was a little fearful of this whole extravaganza that I thrust upon him. He loved it. He did great. It was fabulous.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and switch gears to, we call it the lightning round, but it's just basically me asking short questions and you giving fairly short answers, but we go all over the charts with it. But what's a recent book you read?
A recent book that I have read, Friction, and that was about doing marketing strategies that are different than what you think they should be. So you find the point where your customer might turn away, and that's what you focus on. And how do I bring that person in and show them that I really want them as a customer. But if we're not a good fit, then I can send them to somebody who might be a good fit for them. So it's good. It was a really good read.
Nice. Where's a recent place you visited or traveled outside of the equestrian trip?
A recent place I visited or traveled. I'm such a curmudgeon. Tennessee is, okay. I went to Cincinnati just to watch one of my son's gymnastics tournaments, so that's always a blast.
So that means he's doing pretty good if he's going all the way to Cincinnati. So competitive?
Well, he is competitive, but unfortunately there's not a lot of competitions here in Middle Tennessee.
Gotcha.
So you find yourself spending weekends during the season traveling around. But we always try to hit a great restaurant and to sit and have a nice meal. So that's what we do.
So what does a favorite meal look like? Is it Chicago style, like deep dish pizza, or what are some things you like?
Well, there's a fabulous little Mexican restaurant around here called Jose's, and we eat there. You could probably run into us multi-nights a week at Jose's because it's awesome and it's quick and it's easy and it's good. The kids love it.
You can't go wrong with Mexican food.
I know. But steaks is probably, if I had my choice, it's a steak and potato type meal. So
Gotcha.
If somebody sends me to Morton's, I'm not unhappy.
What do you like to do to relax?
That is a good question.
Do you ever relax?
I don't relax a lot. I like to read. I do not like to work out, much to the chagrin of my husband, who loves to work out. I like to walk. As my cousin would say, I can spa with the best of them. So I can certainly do some things to relax, but reading is probably the most relaxing thing.
What, for you and your husband, any certain places that you like to go, just the two of you, restaurants, trips? What do you two do to kind of recharge?
You know, we really enjoy hanging around with the kids. So even if somebody invites us to go somewhere by ourselves, we somehow still manage to bring one or more of the children. We just would really rather be with them than without them. So
sure.
we try to do what they do. You know, Julie-Karel plays softball. She's a catcher. And so, you know, we'll spend all day at a softball tournament, and it's okay by us.
What, when you look at maybe some advice that either your parents gave you or a mentor, what's a favorite bit of advice?
My mom is a really strong lady, and one of the things that she taught me, she said, always strive to be better than everyone else, but don't for 1 minute think that you are. And that was a really strong message, and I think it has served me well.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur who wants to start a business, especially obviously knowing that you've been in business yourself and managed all those different levels and nuances? What advice would you give someone?
Do it. You know, one of the things that I think makes me able to do things is I am just a tad bit crazy. I do not think that I can lose. I know I walk with him. I know he's in control. And I have just a sense of calm, even though everybody else may be freaking out. I know it's going to be fine. So just go forward and do it.
What do you hope when you look back many, many years from now, obviously, because you're creating your legacy every day, but what do you hope that people say about you and the difference you were able to make with you and your family and obviously your business as well?
I hope that people think that I was helpful, approachable, kind, and thoughtful. I think that would make me happy.
There you go. Well, last question is the easy one, is just tell listeners where they can go to learn more, website, social media. Where would you direct us?
Well, of course, the firm has the website, so that is spicerfirm.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm going to say I'm on Facebook, although I'm not a giant Facebooker. I'm more of a voyeur, I should say.
Gotcha. I think a lot of people are. That's fair.
Yeah, personally, I don't think I post a lot. Now, professionally, I like to put content out there, but personally, I'm a lot more reserved.
So on LinkedIn, do you go by JK or real name? Where do you fall on that one?
It's under Julie-Karel Elkin,
okay.
But I think the paren JK is in there, close paren. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we greatly appreciate all you're doing, the difference you're making. We appreciate you being a part of the ChangeMakers podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Lipscomb & Pitts Insurance. To learn more about our guests and to share your stories of others leading by example, visit us online at citycurrent.com. Connect with us online using @CityCurrent or follow the conversation using the hashtag ChangeMakers. Now, think big, start small, and act now. Be a changemaker.